So problem 15 says, well, we're going to give you a wave, and now you have to visually recognize all of these mathematical quantities and plug it into the equation. So once again, notice this is a cosine wave. That's going to determine how we pick our starting point. And notice again that the values were distributed out again. So for me, I'm going to start with my general equation. And there's a plus sign in my original, guys, so I'm going to keep it a plus sign here. So I'm going to start with my original equation. If I compare the general wave to the wave I was given, well, I can already see that b is 2. And I know b is 2 because even if I distribute the b out, I just get bx. So b is 2. Amplitude, we can see, well, I could mathematically do it by saying it goes from 5 to negative 5, right? That gives me 10 when I subtract them, divide by 2, and I get 5. I can also see, well, here's the midpoint of my wave. Oops. Right? And it's 5 units up, and if I check the amplitude here, right, it's 5 units down. So A is 5. Now before I tackle C, also look at my equation. There is no number being added or subtracted from the end of this wave. So D is 0, but I also can see D is 0 because that's clearly the middle of the wave, right? And D is where the midpoint of the wave is. So this is 0. So I just like to make sure I'm always accounting for all 4 parts. Now C's the tricky part visually. So this is where you have to keep in mind whether you're using a cosine or a sine wave. So in the previous problem, we had a sine wave, and we said sine waves start at their midpoint, and so we shifted the midpoint left. Cosine waves start at their maximum, so they start at the top. Now here's where the plus or minus game matters. If you have a plus in here, that means the function was shifted left. So a normal cosine wave should be right here. So I look left for the first peak that I see. And if I go down, it's at negative pi over 2. So my general equation of my wave, I would say, well, C is negative pi over 2. Sorry, I didn't mean to put a plus sign here earlier, guys. The negative sign, right, now if I plug my negative pi over 2 into this equation, a negative times a negative is a positive. So there's my phase shift. So I like always starting with the general equation because the sign of C always returns the proper equation back to me. So now the only thing different about my wave and the wave they want is, well, let's distribute the B across. When I multiply 2 times pi over 2, the 2's cancel, and I just get pi. And we don't need to write the 0 because it's plus 0. So there is my wave. And so A, little a is 5. Little c is positive pi, right? And once again, if you weren't reading this properly, students would say the wave was shifted pi to the left. The wave was actually shifted pi over 2 to the left.